Let's do it.
Hello, this is Sylvester Stallone, and it's really a pleasure to be involved in showing some of the scenes that comprise the original script and were acted wonderfully. And I want to thank all the actors for participating. And I think it's important to see a film from different points of view. These particular scenes didn't make it into the film for, a variety of reasons, sometimes time restraints, whatever, but I think a necessity or also a curiosity to see footage that perhaps would never be seen ever again. So it's nice to keep a record of these things. And again, I'm really grateful to have had Warner Brothers and everyone involved to assist me in having this come forward, and we have a record of this. Thank you very much. We're getting this opportunity to review material that wasn't in the final cut, which I think is kind of interesting because characters can take on a certain life of their own. And quite often when certain scenes have been omitted, it changes the entire complexion or the arc of the character. So in this rendering here, we'll put in enough material where you'll see all the characters had all the ability in the world, but he never really exercised temperance, or I guess common sense, and he got into many accidents, and his body is scarred and just one big collage of historical mistakes that he made while driving. And to kill the pain, he would take, an abundance of alcohol, painkillers, and just developed a lot of bad habits. He just never quite got it together. Even though he had the ability, he just didn't have the fortitude or the discipline, and he carried it to the point where it eventually just destroyed his private life and his professional life. And here we see Joe starting his normal day with painkillers, whiskey, a cigarette, and actually nothing to do. What he does is he lives kind of in his own world, and he works as a, believe it or not, a tire tester, a very, very dangerous job. When he does get work, he tests material for race car drivers to see if they're really safe for the real thing. And while he's doing this, he works in his barn, and he's kind of like lives in the past a little bit. So he's presently building or rebuilding an old Indy Formula One racing car that is kind of like representative of who he is. This is the actual beginning of the film. And as he slowly tries to put his life together, it's kind of indicative of what he's doing with the car. They're both kind of like inseparable, and I guess that's the metaphor for who he is, and will play out very importantly in the final scene in the movie when you see this car, what it eventually turns into. Right now he's being addressed by Burt Reynolds, who plays Carl Henry, the team owner, and perhaps Joe's only last remaining friend / nemesis, because Carl is kind of a reminder to Joe of what Joe could have been, but he's also the only friend that Joe still has. And right now, Carl, being kind of a Machiavellian, very manipulative person, but a good man, is going to give Joe what Joe thinks is a second chance at life. But I think Joe will be quite rudely awakened when he does get to the track, but he doesn't know that at this point. Also, I might add at this point, Joe is a little shaky about jumping back into the real world again. His confidence isn't exactly what it should be, and he is rusty. But there is that lingering, I guess, second sight, the chance, could he perhaps do it right?
It's like music to my ears. You seemed a little uncomfortable back there, Joseph.
Yeah, well, I think wearing some strange sweaty hat has a effect on me like that. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna get one of my own.
Everybody's got to answer to somebody.
Even you?
Yeah.
God, I'm looking around here at these guys. I'm starting to feel really ancient.
I got stuff in my refrigerator older than these young drivers.
I hear that.
All right, this is a scene that's in the film, but again, it's in a more truncated form, much more abbreviated. But this really sort of establishes a relationship between myself and character Burt Reynolds plays Carl, and also we talk about my ex-wife in this being played by Gina Gershon, and also has one of my. We'll talk about being dyslexic in love.
You were always dyslexic in love.
It's the kind of relationship that Joe would have with Carl, where they could be quite brutally honest, or the kind of stable private life, which plays very importantly into this film, to make a successful go of it.
Here is a good example of how this kid should never be when he grows up.
Yes.
I thought you brought me back here to race.
At this point, there's a tremendous realization when you have what you think is your redemption, your second shot at the golden ring, your one last opportunity to salvage something out of your life. And it's a very difficult thing, which will be played out later in the movie, for Joe to completely relinquish this dream that he has and become a supporter and a protector, a father figure for this new, young, arrogant, insecure driver that, by mere virtue of his age, has become the important player here. And Joe, because of his age, has become basically obsolete. In the original script, Joe has just distinguished himself by still having his racing chops, and on his way back to the dressing room, he comes across the one moment or the one person that he is fusing alcohol and depression, and these two were just not meant to be together.
You need a shave.
Yeah, I need a lot of things.
So? What about me? How do I look?
This was shot underneath the actual arena area, and all the people that you see in the background, are the real thing. So we were trying to take advantage of working our way into the fabric of the racing world without disturbing things.
Look at me. You are such a chicken.
What I really loved about Gina's performance here is there's a tremendous familiarity that, like a woman who knew him so very well, exactly what buttons to push, and they talk in this kind of shorthand and flirtatious manner, but everything is very razor-edged and poignant and meant to elicit an effect. It's like someone who's been waiting for 4 years to vent, and she's got it all together. She's played the scene in her mind 50 times. She knew this moment would happen, and she's going to enjoy it at Joe's expense.
You're seeing that.
In the film and in the original script, his ex-wife decided to marry my young protege. It'll happen eventually in this film.
No. Do I look mad?
Now, Joe here happens to like this young man a lot, and this is kind of like his young protege. This was really a tricky character to write, because here's a man who's married your ex-wife, but you still like him. Not so easy to do, but that's the kind of character I played. There was nothing personal. He knew that his life would just not be good with the woman, but then again, for this young man, that woman may be a very good addition to his life. Maybe she's going to add strength and focus because he's kind of young and naive.
You left. It was over. She stayed around. She was alone, you know.
Memo, you don't have to explain.
But I don't want to explain. You're going to let me explain?
Pressure's on.
Here he is. Now, at this point, Joe is kind of like let his guard down. He's had a few beers, and her antenna is totally up at this point.
Could be.
Taking his painkillers, that's what keeps him going. But this is completely when actually they're no better than anyone else, and she's just trying to take the air out of them a little bit and realize that this whole psychological would you say it's like they think they have this tremendous psychological advantage and physical, and she's going to bring up some of his shortcomings shortly, and it's not going to be very flattering.
You're shot, Luke.
Oh, no, no.
What? Don't tell me you don't know how to play.
No, I don't even know how to hold a stick.
Oh.
I felt as though if these people start off at total opposite ends of the likability charts, and he now and then falls into his old tricks, like, trying to help her with a pool cue and being a little more physical than he should, perhaps that worked 20 years earlier. She's not buying into this at all. She's now going to be business. She's all about business. And this film, even though we let the scene play out a little bit longer than it, obviously a lot longer than it was in the film, I think it's important because this sets the tone. She and Joe basically are the focal points, the two main focal points of the film, because of what they each represent in the, symbolically in the modern day world. She is about advancement. She is about, realizing that brains and insight and incorporating philosophy, and this is how you exist in the modern world. And he still lives in the old school world where it's, will over skill, and sometimes find that out.
After an accident, are you ever the same? I heard that.
Now she starts to bring up some situations that are, and now your dirty laundry, your public humiliations, your private pain is now being held up to public scrutiny, is just going to be used to fill pages of a magazine. And Joe goes, "That's really great. I'm glad I made your life a lot easier, because if I wasn't such a loser, you wouldn't have anything to write about. You must be really happy you met me."
The woman of your dreams. I mean, you cleaned up your...
Yeah, and I always said that, these are really interesting stories if it wasn't about me.
Really, what'd you hear?
You want to hear what I heard?
Yeah, don't stop now.
Well, things didn't work out because how do I put this? She was outwardly outgoing, sleeping around. And unfortunately, you knew a lot of her companions, so you started drinking, resulting in the near fatal accident with Bo Brandenburg in '97.
Wow. That's an interesting story if it wasn't about me. You must be glad I'm back, Luke.
Why is that?
Every good story needs a loser character, right?
I'm just relating what I heard. I'm not trying to upset you.
I don't get upset. I get disappointed. I guess that game's over.
You know, Joe, I wanted to interview you because you actually have something to say. These young drivers, they've barely lived. I mean, your life is so colorful by comparison.
Yeah, like a bruise.
I'm just trying to get to know who you are.
Look, if I was trying to get to know you, I wouldn't remind you what a fool you've been and then insult you by calling it colorful.
I'm sorry.
Are you really?
Truly am.
Okay. Well, then don't judge me until you get to know me a little bit better, okay?
How do I do that?
Well, you can start by finishing this game, Miss Wise Ass.
Wise ass.
Didn't you say words don't mean anything unless they're true, right?
Yeah.
Then I think it's still your shot. Wise ass.
Male pattern badness, huh? I accept that challenge.
Good luck. The balls are calling.
Stand back. Like this, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What could you have in common with that woman?
What'd you say?
What?
Now this really shocks Joe. I can't believe it. He's bringing up his relationship with the writer. This man, so we see that even his friend who brought him back is jealous.
I don't know, you just don't reach into a man's mind and turn it around in 5 minutes. It's not that easy.
At this point, Jimmy is not doing very well, and his overbearing brother DeMille is becoming a little short with him, and his career is starting to flounder, and his team is beginning to go down the tubes, and I'm being accused of not doing my job, which he's not wrong about, because I haven't been able to reach out for this
And go away and forget about it.
young man yet. He's just not receptive. He won't make the move. He won't get rid of the girl. He won't start to face the fact that he must deal with his fears. Meanwhile, Carl Henry is getting a little angry with the feminist writer, and certainly getting angry with me because I've let him down. But there's a lot more to this scene than just about Jimmy Bly. This is our relationship, myself and Bert's, is really defined in this moment.
Reminds me of you.
And during the scene, it was like a hurricane going on. There's airplanes overhead. You'll hear a flapping of the wind, and we were having to put 20-pound weights on the canvas ceiling to keep it from blowing away. And also my children were just off camera screeching and yelling and throwing animal crackers at me in the middle of the scene. So it was kind of hard to keep focus. But I like what's being said in this scene.
Now, is it a hero or is it hype? What do you think?
He really puts me on the spot, and
I don't know, Carl. There's maybe 20 guys in the world that can drive these machines right.
he's making me completely stripped down to bare emotions and being somewhat, or obviously humiliated in front of the woman. He's taking this moment to just drive home the point that without him, I'm nothing. And I've got to start being honest with myself. I've got to drop my ego and go after this young man and really put another person first for once.
That's it. At my level.
I can't hate you, Carl. You're probably the most honest man I know.
So Joe, no matter what, still respects this fellow, and he kind of is old school. He would rather have someone tell him raw, blatant, painful truth. See? Man, I know. He's the only one who's told him the truth in probably his whole life. And he realizes the way, the script was written, I know that to get Jimmy Bly focused of all his protection and his excuses and his insulation. So he's basically, what he's saying here is don't be a fool anymore. I know you're scared of this guy. And he's going, no, I'm not scared of anybody. You must be scared of him. That's why you don't at least take the woman back if you're not scared. How you know that you really want her back? Drop the ego. Drop this titanic male ego for once and go back and take the woman that you love back. Because I didn't do it alone, and I need me focused on him.
Do I?
It's not a very hard question, Bo.
Why do you care?
What do I care? Because every mistake you made, I made 50 times over, so I don't want to see you any more messed up than you are now. That's why.
Maybe she doesn't want Becky.
Look, you two guys, you have a lot of history. That doesn't go away so fast. Get into that man's mind by flashing her around because he scared you? I don't know that, Jimmy.
You don't have it right, Joe.
What don't I have right? You get a monopoly on using people?
Yeah, it's kind of like you use me, isn't it?
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah, I know I got that right, Joe. You think you know me so well? Well, I know you too. It's gonna be over for you soon. And that gets to you because I don't think you like yourself very much. And for me,
You're going.
tell me, Joe, where am I going?
You're looking at it.
There's no way.
It's right here, right in front of you.
I told you. I'm me and you're you.
Why'd you take the car, Jimmy?
I don't need anyone else pushing on me.
Say it. Go on, say it.
Forget this.
Say you got no control over it.
Yeah, I'm controlling what I need to be controlling.
You're totally out of control. Anybody can fake guts, but nobody knows what they really are until they've been pushed to the edge. But you can't be a coward and drive the way you drove tonight. No, your problem is you're afraid of failing people, not being what they want you to be.
What, I'm not supposed to care what they think.
Look, Jimmy, you care too much, and that's as bad as not caring enough.
Champion did take his girlfriend back, and Jimmy is standing all alone, staying all alone. And I'm finally reaching him, and I'm trying to explain to him there's more to life than what he has come to believe. And it's about, and in this scene, he finally brings that to light, what he was talking about. You can't fight it because you are the machine. So in that sense, when you can, or at least when I can, try to weave a story that what was said in the first reel comes to fruition or actually blossoms in the last reel, then that I feel as though I've accomplished something. The words are all intertwined, and you're keeping this constant thought or this wavering through line going there. There's kind of a method to your madness. And finally, he gets to drive home his point, even though he had to wait an hour and a half. Now, the scene right here is a scene that I liked a lot that unfortunately was not in the film either, but after driving through the streets at almost 200 miles an hour, I had a feeling that they would be arrested. I know. Call me a dreamer, but I would have thought that. Okay, and they are arrested, and they're brought before this big, magistrate in this city hall, and there's all this incredibly embarrassing publicity. And Joe is suspended. I go, I'm suspended? So he throws me to the wolves as a lesson, and lets Jimmy Bly kind of like be humiliated by getting off with the offense. But more importantly, we realize that Jimmy really is the show. He's the valuable one, and I am expendable. So that's what this scene's all about. So at the very end of the scene, all I have is my relationship with the writer, which I think is, again, another philosophical point. When the storm usually clears and all the well-wishers or, backslabbers are gone, there's not going to be many people left standing around you. And she continues to prove herself and be honest and basically say, you deserve to be fired and suspended. And I go, well, thanks a lot. This scene was very, very difficult for me to write because I must have wrote the scene 50 times. There was about 26, 28 versions of this, and every time I'd approach it from me being aggressive with him being instructive, him pitying me, him being volatile, it just was... I didn't know where to go with this. You didn't want to be overly melodramatic, but you really actually do need to be a little melodramatic.
This accident started a long time ago. Took a while to get here.
This whole scene could actually play in silence with just me looking at the burnt car, and you can get that across. Or Carl Henry coming into an empty room, us exchanging looks, and him just turning and returning. And we know pretty much that, is this really what life is all about? This foolish game that we play? For what? And people die and get mangled for the ego of going 2.5 miles, a mile, a centimeter, an inch quicker, faster, shorter, distant, whatever. It's just absurd. So this is just sinking into Joe's mind, because this is really not what I want to do anymore. I don't have it. I don't have it inside. I'm not that aggressive anymore. To me, it seems... Unfortunately, the character has become mature. It's not exciting to me anymore. It's foolish. It's not worth people dying. He's lost his edge. And Carl cannot believe what he's hearing, because you feel pity, and he's the slowest man in the fastest sport. And I always thought, what a difficult position that must be, how frustrating that must be. And here he sees all these young drivers that he hires, all these powerful personalities, pays them a fortune, and they complain about feeling pity. You don't know what pity is. You don't know what pain is. Spend an hour in my body, and then you'll understand.
Gonna go for Brandenburg next year.
I mean, this scene does stretch out, and this is not, what I would call a finely edited scene right now. This is basically what you're seeing now is what was just strung together originally during the filming. This is what we call a rough assembly. So you're seeing it the way I saw it, and not many people saw it, but you're seeing it in its entirety with the dialogue intact, and this, again, like I said, this is not what you call finely edited tune. I mean, we would probably, lose this thing here, pick up a beat there, go to a wide shot, but this is more or less just to hear the words. It's kind of like what we do when we're reading the script for the first time. You just sit around and just hear other actors read the dialogue and see if it kind of rings true.
I'd take it right to the edge, and I'd look over again. Ain't gonna happen. We're hiring men like you. Men who don't have the slightest goddamn notion about what real loss is all about.
At the very end of this scene, after he vents and we think that he's so tough without any compassion or remorse for himself, anyone, I leave the garage and we see Bert, or his character, finally break down a little bit. We see a glint in his eye. We see the real pain, but he won't even allow it to be seen by Joe. Quite often people want you to see them cry. Deep down inside, he has tremendous compassion. This is his show. He's brought all these people together. He's responsible for them, and he lives through them. And quite often he's lost control. His big plan didn't work and is left with this terrible, terrible tragedy to which perhaps he's to blame. Now I go back to the hotel, and I'm going to meet my girlfriend now, who is Luke Jones, the writer. But I'm also going to see my ex-wife, who, when we first see her in the movie, is very confident and glamorous and centered, and now we're going to see her broken down to the point where she's just a shadow of what she used to be. Her husband now can't ever walk again, can't barely move. Her dreams of being something that she could never, that she can't be, that she's just starting to not be able, she can't accept this very, very dark, miserable future. She just can't handle it. And who does she go back to? The one person who she feels a kinship with, who she's always loved. And at this point, the games, it's all over. There is no more. The veil of foolishness and false characters are removed. Now she stands there basically as like a raw nerve, and no pretense other than I can't be alone. I can't take it anymore. I want to be with you. And if I had been good with you before, this never would have happened. It's what everyone basically says when a terrible calamity happens. What if? And quite often it isn't. You don't really want me back. You want a time back when everything was nicer, safer, and clearer, and cleaner, and more protected. And you really don't want me back. You want yourself back, the way you were, and that can't always happen. This scene here is one of my favorite scenes. It's kind of a difficult scene to write too, which I guess a lot of scenes are difficult to write. But this one was because it's a scene where 2 and 3 things are going on at the same time. She's there to give him a surprise party. He's there to basically tell her, I'm going to break up with you. But now he didn't expect her to be, having these beautiful surroundings, and like now he truly feels guilty, but there is no way he can avoid what he feels is an inevitability, and that is after the season is over, after the magic is gone, after people have pulled up their tents, she's going to see him for what he really is. She goes back to New York. She's very sophisticated. She lives in a different world, a very erudite world, very, scholastic world. His is a very physical world. It's removed. He's not overly educated. His needs are pretty simple. And where's the common bond? There's no way he would ever fit into New York, and he doubts she certainly wouldn't fit into his rural life. So he wants to, cut her loose. He wants to say, look, honey, let's just end it tonight because it's going to end tomorrow, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to go any further with this than I have to, because I've always been a believer that everything has a time limit on it. It really does. And he's being incredibly realistic, because in his mind he's been dumped a few times before, or he's done this to other people, and he believes this always is going to happen. And she says, maybe it will, but why do you have to live in the same kind of pattern, same kind of overview? Why do you believe that things have to continue all the time? Why can't perhaps have an exception to the rule? And that's what this is all about. People living, believing in stereotypes that, it happened once, it happened twice, it's going to happen all the time. Not true. Not true.
Or did you just make up an excuse to spare my feelings?
Wait, I'm trying to spare my feelings, too. Maybe if we had met a while back, we just started up too late.
It's not too late.
It's never too late. But to some people, it's an easier way to just continue and say, it's too late, it's too late, it's too late. Because they're afraid to make the effort. They're afraid to broach the possibility of failure. Is that I can't deal with another failure, so I'll just fall back on stereotype. I'll just fall back on preconceived ideas. See, all his excuses, I think, are just very, very shallow and almost kind of looking for self-pity. And she's not buying into this at all.
I don't want you around either.
So you made up my mind for me?
This is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I'm doing you a favor.
He probably is doing her a favor.
I'll take you back to the hotel.
I'm going to stay here tonight.
But she didn't ask for it. It's kind of like, he's dashing her ideas or her fantasies or her hopes. Perhaps she's been surrounded by a certain kind of man her whole life, and this is interesting. How dare you cut loose or tell me what my type is, or try to dictate my life or write my life.
You can either keep them.
So she gives him something that I really a thing that I believe in, that problems do make the world go round. Love is nice, but problems do make the world go round. And if you don't solve your problems, if you don't get rid of your problems will get rid of you.
About tomorrow.
This is at the very end of the race, and Jimmy is 1, and Bo Brandenburg is coming 2nd, and Joe is fighting his way through Munchkin Land here. Joe is going down the pit lane looking for Luke Jones' career is over, but maybe another career, maybe his life is now coming into play, and perhaps he was, a little hasty.
Joseph!
You could have won that race, couldn't you?
I did win.
Serious.
There's different kinds of wins, Carl.
Did he let Jimmy Bly win? Did he really? Because, really, if he had won, what was the upside? Was he really going to... I mean, he is well past his prime, but the ultimate sacrifice is here he is coaching this kid. He realizes his entire career is ahead of him. And if he has the opportunity to pass the banner, yeah, so he has to swallow his pride and whatever. I think that it's a much more noble cause to be forward-thinking, say, okay, yes, I could do this, and you have the knowledge that you have the potential for victory. But in the long run, in the big picture, is that little moment of satisfaction going to be worth what you could do for someone else? You could change the entire course of their life with a little bit of respect and a little bit of accountability. Now finally he runs up to her, and luckily she hasn't left, and he wants to express in his awkward way that he was a little judgmental. And
You said about working out problems? Maybe you're right. I think we can forget about last night.
What happened last night?
In second place, racing for Ganassi Target, Bo Brandenburg.
even though all the celebration is going around and everyone's taking their bows, she's going to say, she goes back and calls him a wise ass, which is what he had called her in the beginning of the movie. So again, it's a kind of like a transfer of power. She's throwing back at him what he threw at her in a very instructive and, loving way. But again, it brings the dialogue full circle. And when that can happen, it's a nice occurrence. Burt was great in this movie, but sometimes scenes are removed for good reason, because this is a scene supposed to be against the background of a screen, but I don't know how, but Burt was actually becoming airborne and somehow leaving the stratosphere by the end of the shot, so that's a feat in itself. This is the original ending of the movie where we see a car that Joe was working on in the beginning of the movie, a race car. Now it's completed, and Luke is with him on his terrain, his world, and she's very, very happy. She's adapted to it. Maybe it's what she's been looking for her whole life. So the car and what he says kind of plays into where his future is going to be. I mean, no, he can't race for the rest of his life, but he just wants to drive. He wants to keep moving, and she says, sure, you keep moving. Just remember to come back. So as Joe drives away and through these leaf-lined lanes going to the wooded area, we kind of see he's going into the autumn of his life. It just he knows that all hard-earned glories are behind him, and perhaps what's ahead of him is a new discovery of something much more rewarding, which is love. True love. And as I drive away in this car, I was very honored and actually flattered to be involved in this world of racing, which I gained such incredible respect for these drivers. This machine in particular was incredibly difficult to operate because of the slick nature and the power. This film was a real wonderful experience on many, many levels. I worked with some of the finest people, and I also traveled around the world and met some of the most extraordinary athletes ever. And I want to thank my wonderful, wonderful actors who, even though they may not have had all the scenes they wished been in the final film, they were incredibly gifted and generous, and they brought life to a project that I had dreamed was going to come to fruition for 5 years, and I thank them for that. Thank you.